Divisional round is coming up, and the wildcard round may have been a little bit surprising. This is Sports Hour. Welcome back to Sports Hour. For this week is the wild card round. We had quite a few games. We had 8 games this round, and it was a kind of it. You'll see this is what we talked about here. We had the first off. We had the first game, which was the Dogs versus the Knights. That game ended in a very weird way. Dogs dominated the Knights in the first 3 games, 84 to 94 in the first one. And then they ended up barely keeping ahead in game 2, winning 114 and to 112. Then the Dogs weren't able to handle the Knights in the next 3 games, where the Knights ended up winning 14 to 12, and then in the 2 overtime games they won 111 to 114 and 123 to 124 in this respectfully. That happened today at that time. So in that case, the Knights won. Knights were the 8th seed, which has not quite happened last year. Last year, the Indians just demolished them for 4 rings. Were demolished, so they got demolished by the Giants. Then we had the Dragons and Hawks. The Dragons just couldn't keep control of the games, and they ended up keeping control somewhat, but not enough to make much of a difference in the games. They lost 69 and to 77 against the Hawks, 112 to 124, and 120 to 432, all in order in those games. Browns and Falcons. The Browns and Falcons battled to make it really close in game 1 and 2, 70 to 65, and then 111 to 103. But then the Browns absolutely demolished them in game 3, with the Jets beating with the Falcons losing 132 to 63. Browns winning that one 30, winning that game. So they won 3-0. In the last one, the Tigers and Panthers, it was a very close first 2 games. We had the Tigers got dominated by the Panthers in game 1 through all of the games, pretty much. The first game was pretty close compared. It was 105 to 93, but the Panthers kept control over it. But after that, the Panthers pretty much dominated. In game 2, it was 163 to 88. And in game 3, the Panthers allowed a total of 18 points, scoring 162 to 18. They couldn't get anything going off of that. The Warriors and the Jets faced off in the ABL, and that was about it. The Warriors couldn't go anywhere. While they did win Game 2, they just couldn't get anything going. They struggled because the Jets kept scoring long 4-point shots, which don't exist in the NBA, but 4-point shots are basically a certain position, kind of like not quite half court, but basically in the middle of basically around half court. So the Jets won 99 to 73. Then the Warriors won 103 to 100, and the Jets won in their last two games 105 to 93 and 118 to 79. That game ended up being with the Warriors ended up losing that one, so the Jets won 3-1. Stars and Huskies was another game that was happening in the ABL. It was kind of sad to see how the Stars just didn't handle anything going for it, because the Stars did not really handle it going into this. The Stars, other than Game 2, the Huskies absolutely dominated them, winning for the entire game. Game 2, they kind of were in back and forth when it came to it. The games were close in all of them, but it wasn't enough. The Huskies won the series 3-0, and they will move to round 2. They will move into the divisional round. The games were 106 to 87, 115 to 113, 102 to 93. It's unfortunate to say the Stars who did so well early on in the season to not make it very far into this one. They eliminated round 1 in the playoffs. We got the Werewolves and Otters. Not much to say about that one. The Werewolves just took control of the game 1, and the Otters tried to fight back. They just couldn't get anywhere. They lost all 3 of the games. 103 to 86, 135 to 121, and 124 to 118. The Werewolves won that series 3-0. Last one was the Bobcats and the Leland Cats. Bobcats just couldn't do anything. They were having a hard time. They just didn't get anything going. The Cats' offense just overcame that team, which made it so the Bobcats' defense couldn't do anything. Final scores in those games were 100 to 87, 102, 110 to 122, and then 76 to 93 in those games. I'll update that in the middle as it will foresee it on that point in time. Now let's take a look here what we got. I'm going to get my account here, please. Thank you. It is going to be very tough to put out some of these games because the thing is, Knights end up coming back and winning that game. And I don't know how to say this right now because the Dogs were pretty much were dominating game 1 for sure. They were dominating most of game 2. The Knights were able to come back and they end there, and they ended up losing all the last 3 games. They were behind in almost all the wins in them. So, that being said, the Dogs and the Knights are just in a position they're not going to be in a great positions off this one. So unfortunately, it will be the Dogs being eliminated in round 1. On the other side, the Warriors and Jets. The Jets couldn't get anything going off of that. Other than the second game, The Warriors just couldn't get anything going, which made it so the Warriors got eliminated in round 1. So both 1 seeds are gone after round 1. We get to our second side here. We get the Browns will face off against the Knights. That might be unfortunate just because of the context of what we're actually looking at here. The Browns are just in a lot better position to win this game. Now the Knights, while struggling in the first 2 games against the Dogs, they have pretty much dominated these last 3. And to put it this way, I think it's a very good chance that there is a possibility. These were my predictions. Off of that regard, we'll go ahead and take those down. And to start off, we have in-game wins. We have the Browns and the Knights. We'll get to those in a second here. We also have the Panthers facing the Hawks. This will also be a pretty tough one. And then the Werewolves are going to face against the Jets. And the New England Cats will face off against the Huskies. These are predictions for that. Now, to be honest, for each one of these games, it's going to be kind of tough because in the context is while the Browns are a much better team, they had a sort of an easier schedule. They were able to pretty much dominate when it came to that 3rd game. But if they didn't have that happen for all of the positions, I think that's just going to not be the time they need it. I feel like it's going to be close, and I did pick to say that Dogs will win that one. Obviously, I was wrong, but to put it this way, it's not going to be an easy one matchup between the Browns. I feel like because the Knights are so much better when it comes to it, I'm actually going to say this is probably the toughest one. I'm actually going to give the Browns the loss here. I'm going to say they win 1 game. The Knights win all 3 of the other ones. That's what I'm going to say. I think the Knights end up making it to the second round. It's going to be very tough. I do think it's going to go to game 4. But to be honest, I won't be surprised if the Browns may get a second game. But to put it this way, it's going to be tough for me to put the Browns in because the Browns, looking at their divisional matchups here, the Browns are very good and the Knights are pretty average in positions. So it comes to me that it makes it kind of difficult. Browns are 12-4 normally, and the Knights are right in the middle, like half away. And to me, I feel like because the way the Knights handled the first game against the number 1 seed, I think it's going to be the Knights that come away with it. I could see it being 2 games, but at this point in time, it's going to be tough. And I'm going to give the Knights the win here, but I'm going to say it's definitely not going to be over in 3. I'll get those in a second here. Let me go and take a look here. We got the Panthers and the Hawks, and while I think the Panthers and Hawks are going to have a really tough time between each other, if we look at the Panthers are number 1 when it comes to offense. They're average when it comes to defense. As for the Hawks, they're kind of on the middle end on both sides. And honestly, to put it this way, Panthers absolutely dominated when it came to this. We looked at the Panthers versus the minus that last game, they were pretty high scoring in both sides. They scored a whole of 430 points versus the allowance of just under 200. And to me, that makes it difficult for the Hawks. Hawks just not the team that, while they were able to beat the Dragons in the 2nd seed, they actually did pretty well in that context too. They're just not quite the teammates. I'm going to say while I hate to do this to say the Panthers, I'm going to pay the Panthers 3 wins. I'm not giving the Hawks any wins. I think because of the way the offensive standpoints go with the Hawks, I think the Hawks lose all 3 games. And we'll see the Panthers and the Knights face off. And that's also going to be really kind of complicated because the Panthers and Knights are in the same division, so that puts it in a really weird position. Not to mention, neither one of these teams is a very high seed. Number prediction normally would have been that number one or number 2 would make it through. Neither one of those teams made it past the first round. So to put it this way, that's a tough one. I'm giving Panthers 3-0 here. I could see maybe the Hawks getting 1 game, but to be honest, the Panthers are just a much better team when it comes to the facts here. They've made the playoffs the last couple of years. I don't think it's gonna be much of a chance. We got the Werewolves and the Jets. Okay, this is not going to be close. I don't think there's any chance. Now, how the Werewolves were easily, there was no question the Werewolves were going to beat the Otters. There were just too much. I could have seen it going 1 additional game. But when it gets to the Jets kind of are just not the best team when it comes to it. They're facing this Werewolves who are one of the more offensive-based teams. Look at the Werewolves. Werewolves are 4th and 3rd. They're really good at both offense and defense. As for the Jets, they're not in either one. Not to mention these people they're both in the same division, which means they've played twice before. We'll take a look to see what happened with that one before. To me, I don't think it's gonna be a very fun game. It's not gonna be a fun game for either one of them. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can find the Werewolves games against the Jets. Okay, so you see Werewolves and Jets. Werewolves absolutely dominated the Jets in the first matchup. And let's see, the second time, the Werewolves absolutely dominated them as well. They didn't do as much, but it did still a lot. And to be honest, that is what I kind of would have expected. I'm not going to say that much off of the context here, but I do feel that the Werewolves will dominate. Again, I'm going to go 3-0 here. I could see maybe 1 game to go into the Jets, but that's only because they were actually able to dominate another team that's really good in a position. So I don't know. It's gonna be tough. As for the Bobcats, as for the Leland Cats and the Huskies, playing their earliest game, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a very tough matchup. I don't think it's going to be decided in 3 games. I feel like the Huskies are going to be able to dominate. Huskies, if you look at the Leland Cats score line, Leland Cats are here. They're 9th and 14th versus the Huskies, who are 13th and 5th. So honestly, these teams are very evenly matched when it comes to this. I don't think there's a chance that they just finish off early on. I would say, if I'm going to say this honestly, I think it goes 2-2, and I think it goes to the last little bit here. Have they played this season? That's my question. Have the Huskies played against the Leland Cats this season? Because that might give me the little bit of an edge. Let's see here. No, not there. know, maybe they didn't play each other. It's possible they didn't play. 16. They did not play. So that's actually very tough on the context there. On the context here, that might make a difference if one of the minutes. I am going to say, offensively, the Huskies are 13th, and the Leland Cats are 9th. I feel like it's going to be the slightest thing. I'm going to go with Leland Cats 3-2 here. I feel like it's going to be a very close game. And honestly, I could see this game going either way. These things going either way. So that's what I predict. These games will happen, and honestly, it's going to be very difficult for the Knights just because the context they have to play. Let's see. The games will be 6-14, 6-15, and 6-16. And if it's necessary, they'll play on 6-18 and 6-19. So they could make it to Game 5. These are all how it works. Now, those times are not necessarily insured for all of them, but that's basically the idea of what would happen. The most likelihood is that the first games will all be like this, and then second ones will be different depending on how many teams are left. My prediction is to say that if we go to the next round here, we have the Knights and Panthers face off, and that will make it probably, I'd say, the Panthers. I'd say honestly, the Panthers probably win that one. Sadly, probably at least 3-1. Maybe 3-2. Maybe they get lucky off of that. But because the Dogs, because Panthers did play against the Dogs twice, and went 1-1 against them. As for the Knights, they lost both times, so it's tough for me. The Knights also lost both times against the Panthers, and to me, I feel like it's going to end up being the Panthers and Knights. I think it's probably going to be the Panthers make it to the final round. On the other side, this is tougher because, while in theory I would say it's going to be the Werewolves and the Leland Cats, if it is that, I could also see the Werewolves and the Huskies. And to me, that could go either way. If it's Leland Cats and the Huskies, the Werewolves and Huskies, I would say the Werewolves win and Werewolves will make it to the finals. And if it's Leland Cats, I don't even know how it would work out, because honestly, if somehow the Leland Cats make it through to the finals against the Werewolves, it's not going to be easy for that one either. I'd say that one probably goes 3-2. Those are what I'm thinking is going to happen in those games. Of course, a little bit of time left before that occurs, so we'll see how that works in. This is the end of the Sports Hours. I'll see you back here next week for the Conference Championship, I believe is what it's called. Divisional, yeah, this is divisional. I would say it's probably Conference Championship. That's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to keep your game on.